Hey, welcome in. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Coming to you live from the capital city of the great state of Texas. We're overlooking downtown Austin and the University of Texas. Welcome to the weekly podcast that understands that the pride and tradition of the Texas football program and football in Texas in general will never be entrusted to the timber of the week. This is the Eyes on Texas multicast. We are a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network and are powered by our presenting partners at Grande Equipment and our four other founding partners. I am Aaron Hogan, morning show host at The Horn here in Austin, Texas. He is the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, Mike Craven. It's a multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football and all things football in Texas. We call it a multicast because it's available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube channel, also the Horn FM and Austin's YouTube page, and available for download through iTunes and Spotify. Also follow us all over our social media platforms. We'll tell you about those coming up. But I've got the Christmas tree in the background, Mike. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays. But today, as we record this on a Wednesday, the multicast dropping a little later in the week because we wanted to wait for National Signing Day. The early window opened today, this Wednesday, one day ahead of winter opening up. But here we are. It's Christmas Day for Longhorn football fans, coaches all over the country. It's the early signing window, and it's a big time of year and a very compressed calendar right now in college football. Mike Craven, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Already having some nightmares about what this will look like next year, because within all of this madness right now, which is already crazy, we will add the first round of the college football playoff on December 20th of next year. So the portal, the early signing period, and the first round of the playoffs will all converge on each other. They got to do something about the schedule, the calendar, and kind of what's happening right now in college football.
Feels like it, right? And we'll hear Sark coming up through our four quarters of conversation tonight. Sark talking about, guys who had to jump in the portal like Malik Murphy that didn't really want to, but they kind of had to because of the calendar. He wasn't real happy about it. So we'll hear that coming up. But also on tonight's broadcast and multicast, we'll have in our second quarter, Mike's exclusive conversation with the Dave Campbell's Texas football head of recruiting, the lead there, Greg Powers, his thoughts on another top 5 recruiting class for the Longhorns. At halftime, we'll, of course, check on the Longhorns that are thriving on Sundays in the National Football League. We'll also bring you a little closer to the top-rated player in this year's recruiting class. I think you'll like this. We're going to get to know the Duncanville 5-star plus pass rusher Colin Simmons in our halftime. A really, really good piece done by our friends at Valley Sports. Also in Q3, we'll discuss and hear Coach Sark's thoughts on the 2 transfer portal additions that have become final today. And, of course, in our fourth quarter, it's our Final Four, the big questions around the state of Texas and college football this week as we record this multicast. Before we start, let's thank our presenting partner at Grande Equipment, our great friend Wes Murray, and what a partner he is. He's been here with us through the jump of this thing back in April. He understands that your reputation is all you have when it comes to a project, heavy equipment, you need it. They're going to get it to you. All that matters is getting done on time. And that's why Grande partners with you on each and every project every time. That's how they've operated for more than 3 decades now. They're not in the equipment business, as Wes always tells us. They're in the relationship business every single time. If you need the right piece of equipment for your project, lots of equipment for your project, no matter the scale, they'll get you what you want. It'll be there quickly without hassle and uncertainty. It'll be job site ready and ready to go. And they're an independent equipment dealer, which means they deal with all major manufacturers. They can get you Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, Volvo, and many more. Heavy equipment, sales, rentals, and everything you need. They also have a great energy sector now that's growing like crazy, that's supporting the solar projects all over the country and all over the great state, specializing in pile driver applications, both new and used equipment with the capability of renting statewide and nationally. Our presenting partner at Grande Equipment, international independent dealer. Find them at grandeequipment.com. Remember, Grande doesn't overpromise. They always over-deliver, and Wes and his team will be in New Orleans, where I will be in a couple of weeks, about 10 days now, in New Orleans. Excited to be there and get ready for the Sugar Bowl and the college football playoff semifinal. Can't thank those guys enough. And we'll tell you about our other founding partners throughout our 4 quarters tonight. But, Mike, let's start with our first quarter presented by our buddy Carlos Carrion, the Texas Mortgage Guy, thetexasmortgageguy.com. Tell you about him more coming up. But, Mike, your thoughts on this recruiting class that is, as we sit here today, 21 players in as far as high school players. 1 player decommitted today. There's always the fun flips on signing day. Aaron Hampton from Dangerfield High School up there in East Texas near Texarkana. He flipped to Alabama today. There was a kind of a sense that wasn't a strong commitment. He listed it as an athlete. Longhorns weren't sure whether he's a wide receiver or maybe a safety. Alabama apparently made him a priority at wide receiver, which may have flipped this thing late in the game, but Aaron Hampton flips today. So not 22-21 that we're talking about on our recap. Your thoughts on that situation and just the overall class that the Longhorns have hauled in?
Yeah, overall, really impressive class. One of the best ones I can remember, honestly, in a while. I like the depth of this one and just kind of the positions that they hit. I tend to look at this again like the NFL draft, and what you're trying to get at there is quarterback, wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher, and corner. Texas already has quarterback, so that wasn't a big priority in this one, but they hit everywhere else. 5-star wide receiver, 5-star edge rusher, 5-star offensive tackle, 5-star safety, the best cover corner in the state, and Kobe Black. And so they're hitting the marks at those need big time positions with elite talent. And then they're not just chasing stars elsewhere. If they like a 3-star guy that maybe the recruiting services aren't huge onto, they'll go get him. I think everybody fell in love with Alex January in that Duncanville game against North Shore over the weekend, but he's a 3-star prospect that wasn't getting a lot of love, that doesn't have a very high recruiting ranking. In Texas, I know it's a legacy, but Texas is betting on that. Same thing with like a Nate Kibble or a Melvin Hills. And so it's not just the elite guys. I really like the elite guys. Everybody loves Colin Simmons, right? My mom could turn on the tape and tell you Colin Simmons is really good at football. But it's that next group of guys that I think Sark is doing a great job with. And when you look at the roster right now, they're starting 8 or 9 3-stars on the roster that's playing in the college football playoff. It's not just the 5 stars that win you football games. It's the whole depth of the deal. I think Sark's knocked it out of the ballpark again this year. And they're one of, I think, 4 programs, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas, that have had 3 straight recruiting classes in the top 5. And so they're recruiting with the teams that they're going to compete with year in and year out. I don't know if I can say enough about the roster building Sarkisian and the staff have done.
I think you and I are in alignment on that. We haven't talked about this today, but obviously Colin Simmons, there's 4 5-star players in this class, and they're from all over, right? Colin Simmons is the best pass rusher in the country, certainly the best defensive player in the state. Props to PK and the defensive staff. That's back-to-back years. The Longhorns have landed the #1 defensive prospect in the state. It was Anthony Hill a year ago. It was now Colin Simmons. That's pretty impressive, especially that's one of the things people are starting to talk about with Sark. He's an offensive guy. And sometimes offensive guys neglect the defense, Mike. He's not doing that. Back-to-back years with the #1, defensive player. But they also have Ryan Wingo from St. Louis. There was a little angst today in Longhorn land because apparently he slept in. He's out of school. He's out for break and slept till 10 o'clock and didn't get up and send his letter of intent in early enough. So people started freaking out. He sent it in. It got in there by lunchtime. Good for that young guy taking a little nap. I'm not judging that. That's pretty good. So Ryan Wingo is in, big time wide receiver prospect. Also Brandon Baker from Mater Dei High School out in Santa
Ana, California.
Santa Ana, California. That is right. Mater Dei, the powerhouse there. Today at his press conference, Sark said he feels like he's watching Kelvin Banks all over again when he watches the tape. That feels like him, and he's going to come in and compete for probably the right tackle position this year. Ryan Wingo will compete immediately for one of those receiver spots, and we'll talk about. Those are key positions. Christian Jones will graduate this year and move on after whatever happens with the Longhorn season. But Ryan Wingo, Brandon Baker, guys who can compete early. But there'll be good competition for right tackle, Mike. There's no doubt about that. You're also looking at a 5-star in Xavier Filsaime, the safety out of McKinney. And that's something we'll talk about, Mike, that they're really looking to build the coverage in the back end. They're really looking for I think that's why you're seeing, 3 defensive backs, 2 safeties, or 3 safeties in the portal. That they want to go a different direction with what type of player is back there. They're looking for coverage first and foremost. They want rangy, fast coverage guys that can be sticky in the back end, whether they're playing safety, corner, or the nickel position, Mike. So they can let that pass rush get home, right? You want to play better coverage than you've played. So Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke and the pass rush and the havoc players they're bringing in can get to the quarterback. That's obviously where they're headed with this. So Xavier Filsaime, who flipped from Florida just ahead of signing day, he had been a Florida commitment and commits to Texas today. So he is a 5-star player who is committed today. And so the 4 5-stars are in. And but I agree with you on the under the radar guys. I think that there is a lot to like about that. Alex January is a guy that. Studying him, he's a legacy. His father Mike played at Texas back in the '80s, but our digital producer Nolan Hogan will appreciate this. Grew up playing baseball. He wanted to be a baseball player. Big 6'5" baseball player hitting majestic home runs for Duncanville, playing travel baseball, but he just kept growing. He kept growing, and finally, last year, so when you're playing travel baseball, he's not in the weight room, Mike, during the summer. He's playing baseball. It was just this year that he put football front burner and got in the weight room, started working on it, and you saw him in the state title game. They think Alex January's ceiling is very, very high. What he can be in a big picture way, because he's 6'5" and 320 pounds. He's just kept growing out of baseball, and he's kind of just learning how to play football.
Yeah, send him to the Bo Davis badassery school for a couple of years, and he's probably going to figure that stuff out. I like Jordan Johnson Rebel as well. He's an IMG Academy guy. It's going to mark as a Florida commit, but that dude's a Texan. He's from Texas originally. Parker Livingston, the wide receiver that was injured this year, is a really good football player. And like we saw, Texas has reached a point where none of these guys have to be like. If I told you none of these guys start next year, Texas is still fine. Right. And it's been a long time since that's been true. Like if Colin Simmons can come in and be a third down pass rusher, that's great. Anything on top of that is cake, right? Like if Brandon Baker can come in and compete for that right tackle spot, that's cake, right? Because they have other guys there that can go compete for that. When Kelvin Banks was coming on campus, it was like, man, I hope he can play one of the tackle positions, because if not, Texas is in a lot of trouble. And so they've been able to stash a Jonte Cook. They've been able to stash a lot of these players that we're going to see next year when the cycle turns over. And so it's more of a reload, obviously, than a rebuild. And if you can go to the college football playoff, lose the type of talent that Texas is about to lose, and us still be able to have these conversations about kind of getting right back into it and competing year one in the SEC. Think about where Sark was when he stepped in foot on campus, and where this roster was when he stepped foot on campus to where it is now. I think that is more of a sign of the growth than anything else that's happened here, including the Big 12 championship and the college football playoff.
I'll give you one other under the radar guy. I even love the commitment of Trey Owens, the one quarterback in this class, because he was an unheralded 3-star at Cy-Fair. But what Sark loved about him and AJ Milwee was his competitiveness and his arm. They saw him at a camp, right? He was at a camp, really could spin the football, but could compete like crazy. And think about this, Mike. You're recruiting a quarterback who's going to follow Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Who are you going to bring in? You're not going to recruit a national 5-star kid at that point, right? So you're looking for a kind of an under the radar prospect that you're ahead of the curve on. They get to Cy-Fair and they give him an offer. And here he is. All he does his senior year is go out and win, Touchdown Club of Houston Player of the Year offensively. They beat Katy in a playoff game. Everybody around him tells you he's the most competitive dude they know. And so he's going to come in and play behind Arch and not back down, and Quinn, and just compete and compete and compete. He's 6'5". All of a sudden, he's grown from 6'3" to 6'5" now, and he can really spin the football. So this is a guy that gets where he's coming into. He knows what he's walking into. I like that kind of player that all of a sudden now he gets a 4th star and people are paying more attention to him. Probably could have gone somewhere different, but he wants to come here and be a part of this quarterback room. Trey Owens, another good example of that. With that in mind, let's hear from Sark. This is a piece of audio that we pulled from our friends at Longhorn Network, our buddy Alex Loeb. This was in the morning before all of the signing class had been in, but here's a good overview from Sark on this signing class in 20 and 24 with our friends at Longhorn Network.
Coach, I know it's early in the day, but so far, how is this class shaping up?
Well, it's going well, kind of as expected. I think our coaches and our recruiting staff have done a great job of obviously forging relationships with a lot of the young men and their families. And so everybody's got their timetable of when they're signing and when they're announcing and doing those things. So we want to be respectful of them, but so far so good.
What's been the most pressing need this year?
Well, for us, I think one of the keys is you have your normal numbers that you're looking for, and then you have to look at what's happening to us portal-wise. And I think naturally when you look at the safety position, we knew we needed safeties, but then with some of the attrition at that position, we had to make sure that we solidified that spot, and I think we've done a good job of that.
I was going to say, how do you balance what you need with the best players out there for you?
Well, that's always a challenge, right? You want to make sure that you solidify your roster, but also you want to make sure that you're recruiting really good players and that fit our culture. I think that's one of the things in recruiting that sometimes gets overlooked that we try to take a lot of pride in is, yes, we evaluate the player on tape, in the skill set in camp and things of that nature. But we do a lot of work with the type of person that they are, the work ethic that they have, the type of teammate that they are on their current high school team or college team for that matter, and how are they going to fit into our culture and what we do and what we believe in. I think that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about this class. That I think it's going to be a heck of a class when it's all said and done, from a skill set standpoint, but also how they're going to kind of fit into our culture and what we've been building here for 3 years.
I know this can be traditionally a stressful time of year, getting ready for a bowl game, signing day, but how much of a boost has it been to recruiting that you are competing now in the college football playoff?
Well, I think one of the keys is, you talk about what we're going to be early on, going into year one, coming out of year one. Year two, you can show some of the progress. Year three, it's kind of like, well, here it is. This is what we said we would be doing. And so it makes things a little bit easier, I think, for the recruits and their families to see it firsthand rather than try to project what it looks like. And I think the other thing that's really critical to our success in recruiting is our current players. They do a great job, and our guys understand, the better the players are around them, the better we'll be as a team, the more opportunities they get to win championships and hopefully fulfill their dreams of playing in the NFL, things of that nature. So ultimately, our players get a lot of credit for this recruiting class as well, because without them, talking about the program, how we go about our business, solidifying some of the thoughts that people have, it makes it a lot more difficult. So really, really, thankful for those guys and proud of the work that they've put into this recruiting class as well.
What kind of an impact has the impending move to the SEC had on recruiting for you?
Well, I always think that that's big. The caliber of players that we're trying to recruit here are of the highest level. And naturally, when you're that type of competitor and you want to compete at the highest level, you want to be in that league that competes at the highest level. And naturally, the SEC is a tremendous challenge. And so when you week in and week out, you got to make sure, A, that you got the players that can compete at that level. B, you want to have the depth of quality players. When a guy gets nicked up or gets injured, that the next guy up is as good or possibly better, at least physically. But our guys, I think the recruits are excited about that. A lot of them have taken visits to those other schools that we'll be competing against. And so I think, for us, the idea that this was the year of the transition and that'll be their freshman year, I do think it played a part.
And finally, when you're going down to the wire with the player, when you're trying to get him to come to Texas, what is the final pitch you deliver? What is the ultimate sales pitch?
Well, I mean, I think that, hopefully that we have developed enough of a relationship with them where we can be really transparent and be really honest. That's the first part. It's not a pitch. It's about being honest with them. But I also think that because of that relationship that we forged, that's the pitch, right? It's about the connection that they have with us, myself, our coaching staff, our players, our culture. Obviously a lot of people run good schemes. A lot of people have big stadiums, things of that nature, but the relationships, the player development on and off the field, I think are all critical factors.
All right. Appreciate it, Coach.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
All right, Mike, good stuff right there with Sark. And the words culture continue to be front and center. Like Sark and his staff have really been intentional about the culture and the guys they're going to go after and the type of players they want. You said it a minute ago, they're not chasing stars. They're not chasing, 5-star players just because they're highly rated. They're chasing good players that fit what they want for positions and fit what they want as a person. They're not going to mess with that. I think it's important. Also, a Longhorn Network today, Mike visited with Jeff Banks, the special teams coach. He talked about the same thing, that we're not giving in on this. I mean, just because you're a big name, flashy star, we are really important. It's really important to us to who we're bringing into this program because we've worked at it and we don't want, because the strength of this team this year, Mike, why they're playing for the national championship in, a couple of weeks is the team, right? It's an elite team all the way through. They found ways to win games in all phases. You don't want to disrupt that because of an individual talent that's elite. That can disrupt everything if you bring in the wrong type of player.
Yeah, I mean, just look at Jimbo Fisher up the road and what Texas A&M did right there, right? Like they were signing top 5 classes too. They signed statistically the best recruiting class that's ever been recorded in the history of recruiting classes. And most of those guys are gone. And if you talk to people behind the scenes there and some of the coaches that were there that may not be there anymore, a lot of those were bad takes. A lot of those were guys that Jimbo and that staff were warned about. And they didn't care because they wanted the recruiting rankings. They wanted the 5-star guys. They wanted the talent, kind of like how the Raiders are always, given that, task in the NFL of trying to get those first round guys that maybe didn't work out that well. And they get them in there and then they wonder why it didn't work out so well. And it's like, well, it's more than just playing football, right? Like this is more than a video game and the measurables. When you get to this level, and again, it's luxury, right? Like that's a privilege to be able to be that picky is a privilege. Like you're building the roster the way Sark has built it to get to this point. And when you have Roshan Johnsons and Jordan Whittingtons and Jalen Fords and Bijan Robinsons, you learn what that culture is and you want guys that will fall in line with that. You don't want to mess up a good thing, and putting one bad apple in there can be as bad as, or can be bigger than having 10 good guys in that locker room. And so he's doing it the right way. And with the portal and Texas's attractiveness, they're always going to be able to go cherry pick at a spot or two that maybe they didn't get guys in the recruiting class because they passed over because of character issues.
Yeah, we'll talk about that coming up in our third quarter. When we talk about the portal additions today, 21 high school players in and then portal players too. And they were very specific of those guys, and they can be impact players. Can't wait to let you hear Sark talking about Andrew Makuba and Matthew Golden, who have also become part of this recruiting class of 23 players added. And gosh, Mike, 15, 16, 17, 18 of them may be on campus by January, getting ready for the 2024 season, which is pretty impressive. All right, that's our first quarter. Brought to you by the way, I would also say Mike, Jeff Banks, when he talked to Longhorn Network today, he talked about 2 games left. It was pretty interesting because they were talking to him and he's like, they were asking about all the early enrollees and said, when we're through with these 2 games we have left, we'll welcome them into our program and we'll get them into our plan. And Alex Lowe was quick to say, you're talking about 2 games. He goes, oh yeah, we got 2 games left. We got 2 to go. They're looking big picture. We plan to beat Washington, and we plan to have 2 more games left in our season. Very confident over there at Texas right now of where they can go. All right, our first quarter is brought to you by Carlos Carrion, the Texas mortgage guy. Been our first partner from the very beginning of this back in the spring of last year. And if you want to close your mortgage on time, our man Carlos Carrion is the guy. When it's time for a new mortgage, for a new home, a refi, a rental property, always better to work with an expert in the field who's also a diehard Longhorn fan, right? He's like you. He's following Longhorn recruiting all day today, just like you are. Makes sense, works better that way. Got things to talk about, but also better to work with someone who has lived in this market his entire life. He's a lifelong Austinite, knows the business like the back of his hand and the lay of the land. He's on the pulse of it all the time. As a lifelong Austinite, as we say, born and raised right here, diehard Longhorn fan, almost 10 years in the industry, not here to provide you with just a quote. He is here to guide you and help solve problems and strategize one of the most important financial decisions of your life. If you're thinking about it, you're like, man, should I buy in 2024? Call Carlos, just talk to him. He wants to be your roadmap to that. If you're thinking, man, the rates are still too high, when can they come down? Well, call him and talk to him about it. Even if you buy now, you're still buying in Austin, Texas, a growing market. You can always go back and refi again when the market and the rates come back down. He is the best, I promise you. Carlos Carrion, the TexasMortgageGuy.com is the website. Don't forget the THE. Also on social media at Facebook at Carlos Carrion there. That's 2 R's, Careon. Also on Twitter at Carlos Carrion 36. He brought us our first quarter. Thank you, Carlos, very much. Second quarter delivered by the Good Times and Incredible Scratch Comfort Food at Hayes City Store and the Ice House there, the absolute destination location in Driftwood, Texas. Mike, tell us about the conversation you had with Greg Powers from Dave Campbell's Texas Football, a deep dive into this recruiting class. We did kind of the macro level review, but deep dive with Greg. Tell us about that and set it up.
Yeah, so we talked for about 12, 13 minutes over some of the big guys. Got his thoughts on Colin Simmons and Kobe Black, Xavier Filsaime, and then kind of talked about a couple other guys in the recruiting class from the state that he really liked and kind of what Texas is doing really well on the recruiting class or recruiting ground.
Greg Powers, Director of Recruiting at Dave Campbell's Texas Football.
Here with Greg Powers, recruiting analyst at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Busy day for you. I am not jealous of your day. I don't have to do it as much as I used to back when I was at the Austin American Statesman. How are you hanging in there?
Man, I'm hanging in there pretty good, man. It was a busy day, but it was a fun day. There were a lot of big commitments coming down the pipe. That we went out and covered the DJ Lagway commitment ceremony. Ended up being not a flip, but an announcement to announce that you were sticking with your original commitment. And in this case, it was Florida for DJ Lagway, who was the #1 quarterback.
It is 5:20 on Wednesday, so the Ty Anthony Smith news is expected about an hour and 15 minutes. We won't get that deep into there. Power, you agree with a lot of the other guys that you think he is going to flip to Texas?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if I had to hedge my bets, I would probably hedge them towards Texas. This really, to me, was always a Texas A&M battle. I think one of the main concerns for Ty Anthony as he evaluated his first decision when he committed to Texas A&M is the depth at linebacker that Texas had on the roster. And I think as things have fleshed out, I think that he sees the competition on both rosters, but also believes in his own skill set a little bit more now that he went on a deep run in the Texas high school football playoffs. He's an All-American, and I think that he really is buying into the fact that he could be a star no matter where he goes.
Out of Jasper High School, top-rated inside linebacker on your High 100, a dude, a football playing dude.
Yeah,
that would be a big addition for Texas. You kind of start picturing him and Anthony Hill playing next to each other, and that's a fun prospect for the Longhorns in Austin there. They signed what is ranked right now the 5th best recruiting class in the nation, obviously the best in Texas. I watched your clip there on Dave Campbell's YouTube page about, if we sat here and talked about each prospect, we'd spend over an hour going through this recruiting class. So let's talk about those top 3 guys from inside the state of Texas with Colin Simmons, a guy we both saw win a state championship for the 2nd straight year, win defensive MVP in that game for the 2nd straight year. How good is he? How important is he for Texas moving forward?
Well, he's the highest rated edge rusher since Jackson Jeffcoat. And you guys did a tremendous job, actually, Mike, on the show, kind of categorizing his commitment when he committed to Texas, a few months back. It's hard to really put something on top of that that's better than what you guys actually verbalized at that time. But I like to describe Colin Simmons as a terror. He's a quarterback's nightmare. He's a guy who can pin his ears back and just be a pass rusher, right? And I think that's the setting that he thrives in best. The one thing that I like about Colin Simmons' development is he's added some good size to his frame heading into college. You got a chance to see him at the state championship games. And I think a lot of people who really never watched him before were surprised at how big he really is. He really can stand up to the test that a good offensive tackle is going to present him at the next level. But he has the true edge bending ability to get around those blocks and be a forceful impact as he pass rushes the quarterback. And you really need good pass rushers. I love what Texas is doing. I know we'll get into it, but when you combine good pass rushers with tremendous secondary players, you have the recipe for sustained success.
Yeah, you just watch the NFL draft, right? I mean, it's quarterback, left tackle, wide receiver, edge rusher, corner. And Texas is knocking each of those positions out of the park. I don't think it's a coincidence that Sark spent some time in the NFL and he's approaching that in this kind of way. And you can do that at Texas when you can get these kind of guys. The next guy I wanted to talk about, Xavier Filsaime from McKinney, a 5-star flip from Florida. I know you like him a lot. I watched a couple of his games on Texas Live this year. What are your thoughts on that safety and how big of a get was that for Texas late in the cycle?
Well, Filsaime is a guy who quickly passes the eyeball test. I mean, this dude is jacked. The first thing that jumps out to me is his athleticism. He's a 6 foot, 186. I think he's bigger than 180. He's been listed at 6'1", 180 for a long time. I'm going to say that he's pushing 200 pounds now. I looked at his official visit photos from Texas, and his arms were huge. He's a 10'5", 100-meter guy. He burst onto the scene as a wide receiver at McKinney, believe it or not. He made our DCTF Rising magazine top 25 freshman list as a wide receiver prospect. So that athleticism is carried over to the safety position. And when you usually describe those types of guys, you're not going to say that he has the headhunter's mentality, but that's actually his biggest strength. He's a guy who loves to mix it up in the box. He's a fearsome run stopper with a guy who has the speed and ability to lock down the pass. What's scary about him is that I don't think he's a finished product by any means as far as the techniques of the safety position go, the nuances of the safety position go. I think he's a guy who's going to learn at the college level and become even better. His upside's really high. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he's a top 32 pick in the draft.
Yeah, he's a guy. He's an absolute guy. Speaking of, I mean, Texas is kind of getting back towards that DBU thing, right? Malik Muhammad is paying off. Manny's played really well as a freshman there in Austin. They get Phil Sami that we just talked about, and then they go and get Kobe Black, one of the best corners in the country. What are your thoughts on the Waco Conley product?
I really like Kobe Black as well. I think a lot of people have him rated as a safety. I think he's a lockdown corner to start off with. I think he actually pairs really well with Manny Muhammad. Manny Muhammad is that slick, I don't know what's the word, shifty cornerback, where Kobe Black has some of those same skill sets, but he's a hulking, long-armed guy that you can really pair well with a guy like Manny Muhammad, because he can take on those bigger 6'4", 6'3" SEC style receivers. And Texas needed a guy like that on its roster. You know, Terrence Brooks is pretty good too, but he doesn't really possess the same size as Kobe Black. He seems bigger than 6 foot because his arms are so long. And at Waco Conley, he was tasked to do kick return, punt return, play receiver, play wildcat quarterback. So he has a high level of athleticism. I don't think that you'll see a lot of like 40 times and stuff out there on Kobe Black, but I'm not sure it's really important because his shuttle time is really good. He's a guy who can really flip his hips, stay in a receiver's hip pocket down the field, and can make a forceful impact to, like jar balls loose, has good hands and concentration, and can make plays on the football. It'll be interesting to see because, there's not a lot of teams that Waco Conley plays that ask him to like be a true cover corner, right? And we'll get to see that right out of the gate. It won't take long for us to really assess Kobe Black. But if you want to say, is there a question mark about his game? That would be one of those question marks for me. I just think that he possesses the elite athleticism and all the attributes to be able to stand up to that test.
If I had to bet money right now, I'd say he's going to play star. He's going to play that Jahdae Barron kind of Gilbo role there as he gets bigger. But you're right. I like him as a corner too. He can play in coverage. And that's what you would need in modern football, is guys who can play multiple spots, grow into a safety, can stay out wide. It feels like the top 6, right? Like if we add the out-of-state guys, Ryan Wingo, 5-star wide receiver, Brandon Baker, 5-star offensive tackle, Jared Gibson, the running back out of IMG in Florida. If we take those kind of 6 guys, put them in their own tier, who's a guy you like in that kind of second tier of commitments who are also 4-star high-level guys? Who do you like in that group?
Well, I like Zena Umoslo. That's a guy who I really like, Neto's little brother. He had a really good senior season, 6'4", 210-pound edge rusher, a guy who I think that can come in and, like, if Colin Simmons stumbles, you have a guy waiting in the wings to be able to take those reps from him. He's a very competitive guy, right? Like, he's a guy who I really like. Can I use a guy who is a Texan, but he's out of state? Mike, is that fair?
Of course.
I like Jordan Johnson-Rubel, right? He's a kid from Louisville. He transferred to IMG Academy. He's rated as a 247 Sports 3-star. I think if he would have stayed in Texas, I'd have him in the top 25. I really like his versatility at 5'10", 180 pounds. Again, another secondary selection, and what Texas is doing in that defensive secondary is really special. I would compare his game probably similarly to Deshaun Jameson, the Shark, that played at UT. I'd probably rate him a little bit above where I had Deshaun, as a matter of fact. He's one of the most physically imposing kids in the entire country, and he's got an extremely high football IQ. I really like that about his game as well. So I think he is, like what you were saying, he's a guy that can play corner. He can play nickel and be like in the box and be an effective tackler, or he could possibly even transition to safety. He's a guy who can play anywhere in the secondary. So I really like that about him. But there are a lot of guys. What Texas did this year, mixing those top end guys in with some of these guys who you're talking about, right? Like Daniel Cruz from Richland or Trey Owens. I mean, I really like Trey Owens. He may have to bide his time and wait for that quarterback room to clear out a little bit, but 6'5", 205 pounds. He was the Houston Touchdown Club Offensive Player of the Year. I'll set that up with a little disclaimer. DJ Lagway didn't qualify for that award because that
just outside.
Yeah, they don't consider Willis in Houston.
Yeah, and again, I kind of look at this like the NFL draft for these big schools, and you build your roster in the NFL with those 3 to 5 round guys, right? Like you want to hit on the stars, and you want those at those key positions, but you're going to win year in, year out, week in and week out with a lot of these second tier guys. I just went and looked up stuff for this roster for the Sugar Bowl. They have as many 3-star guys starting as 5 stars on this roster, right? And so,
well, that doesn't surprise me because there's more of them.
well, at Texas, there's not always more of them, right? Like they have a pretty even spread there. I think they have, more 4 stars than anything else on that roster. And so I think Sark has done a good job, as you mentioned, of caring about the up-end talent, but not marrying into it to where it's like only by the star ranking. And if he likes a guy, he's going to go get a guy, even if maybe the recruiting services haven't caught up to that. One of the dudes I like in that realm is we just kind of saw like an Alex January from Duncanville at the state championship game. I think he's just they're knocking it out of the park. They're doing really well. How do you kind of rank this class compared to the last couple big classes within the state?
I keep Alex January as a 4-star before I dive into that. He's a 4-star guy for us. It wouldn't be surprising to me to see him playing in the league. 6'5", 325 pounds with the pedigree that you're looking for. I think you just look at him and see he screams future NFL talent. But I was the only guy to rank T'Vondre Sweat as a 4-star, so maybe I'll win on the Alex January.
That's true. He was on the Fab 55.
So I just think what they're doing is tremendous, right? Like I think they're the cream of the crop right now. One of the top, 2 or 3 schools to me nationally with what they're doing, not only with high school football recruiting, but also in the recruiting portal. Andrew Makuba was a very savvy ad. I mean, one of the top players in the country. I think Matthew Golden's a plug and play guy right now in the transfer portal. And they have more talent coming in than going out. I think in the new era of college football, that is the key. Trying to keep your roster loaded with good players and keep that talent coming into the program instead of going out of the program. And I think that this program's upward trajectory now, playing for a potential national championship this year is just going to be on the rise. They're also very savvy with their approach to NIL. And as I've watched, National Signing Day, there were some teams that were struggling down the stretch. Ohio State, I'll take a closer look at in that regard. They were able to keep Jeremiah Smith on that commitment list, but the reason why there was some questions about keeping some of those top guys is they're not as progressive thinking towards NIL as a school like Texas. And I think that will be to Texas's benefit because guys know that, right? And they're moving to the SEC, which puts them now, to me, on equal footing conference-wise with Texas A&M, who's their main competition in state, right? So they're playing for college football national championship potentially if they can move on past Washington. They're moving to the SEC, which puts them on equal footing with Texas A&M, and they have a whole lot of money behind all that to entice recruits to come play in Austin. So I think we're going to be hearing about Steve Sarkisian's Longhorns now for a long time because it's a program that has ascended to the top of the ranks, and I think it's going to stay there.
Greg Powers, Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Appreciate your time, sir.
Appreciate you having me, Mike.
All right. Great stuff, Mike. That guy knows his stuff. I mean, you did that for a long time. That's a tough beat. It's a fun beat, but it's a tough beat covering high school recruiting in the state of Texas. As good as it gets right there. That's why you should have a subscription to Dave Campbell's Texas Football if you do not, correct?
That is true. That is true. The recruiting stuff year round never stops.
Never stops. High school football state playoffs just wrapped up. The videos, the stories you're writing all the time. Really, really good stuff. That's our second quarter. It's delivered by Hayes City Store and Ice House and our great friends there. Also, the new restaurant for our friends Travis and Tamara Tyndall. That's in downtown Buda, Texas, charming Main Street. It's called Taste on Main. Both places are tremendous. They're very different. Hayes City Store and Ice House is scratch comfort food. Those wood-fired pizzas, those truck stop enchiladas, the chicken fried steak, chicken fried chicken. I've actually tried now the chicken fried pork chop. That thing's unbelievable. It's just wonderful food, great spot, whether you're indoors at the old school kitchen there and diner, if you're out under the canopy of oak trees with the live music 7 days a week, if you're in the ice house, watching sports and having a great time. It's perfect for everything you want, whether it's a big group of people for Christmas and the holidays, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a good getaway. It's Hayes City Store, TX.com online. That's Hayes City Store, TX.com. See the complete mouth-watering menu there online. And hope during the holidays you have some downtime. You'll try their new restaurant in downtown Buda, Texas. Taste on Main Street. If you're looking for steaks, seafood, a little higher end, you don't have to go all the way into downtown Austin to find it and deal parking and dark steakhouses, reservations, and all that. Get to Taste on Main, charming spot, whether you're inside or outside, a more casual feel, but the food is amazing. And they brought us our second quarter. Let's dive into our halftime as we do 4 quarters here on the Eyes on Texas multicast. Our halftime is delivered with just the right pressure by One Source Gas, your one-stop shop in Central Texas for all of your gas products, compressed gas needs. Online at OneSourceGasATX.com. That's OneSourceGasATX.com. Nolan Hogan, our digital producer, joins us. And Nolan, the Longhorns in the National Football League balling out. I know there were a lot of fantasy football fans not happy with the Atlanta Falcons coach Arthur Smith and Bijan Robinson. They played the worst team in the league in Carolina, and he had 7 carries for 11 yards, and that's not good enough. That is not good enough. What is going on with our man Bijan?
Yeah, absolutely not. Yeah, you hit it on the head. 7 carries for 11 yards. He actually had another reception for 3, so 14 yards on the day for Bijan. All the other Longhorns actually played pretty decent this week. Cameron Dicker for the Chargers playing against Vegas in that atrocious blowout had 3 extra points, scored 3 points. Well, Jordan Humphrey for the Denver Broncos playing against Detroit actually had himself a touchdown catch, had 3 receptions in the game. PJ Locke in the same game had 4 tackles, 3 of them being solo and a PBU. Going down to Miami, where they played the New York Jets, Brandon Jones had 5 solo tackles, 2 interceptions. Big day for Brandon Jones, former safety for the Longhorns.
Nice.
Taquan Graham in that Atlanta game for against Carolina had 2 tackles, 1 sack. Rashawn Johnson led the team in carries for the Bears this week against the Browns with 5 carries for 35 yards, as well as 4 receptions for 24 yards. So he had a pretty solid day. Deontay Foreman, on the other hand, had himself a slow day, 2 carries for 6 yards. Charles Omenihu for the Kansas City Chiefs playing in New England had 2 tackles, 1 sack, and 2 QB hits. And Justin Tucker, the other Longhorn kicker in the league, was 3 for 3 on field goals, 2 for 2 extra points with 11 points. And the one non-Longhorn that I wanted to add in here because he is a Austin native, graduated from Bowie High School in 2019, Elijah Higgins, had himself his first NFL touchdown against the 49ers. So,
Eli Higgins, you played against him back in the day, Nolan Hogan.
Oh yeah, he
Your age.
played at Bowie, monster athlete, went to Stanford. So
Beast.
Do not answer a DM from him. If you get it, he got hacked, and I answered a DM from him, and I got hacked like about a year ago. About a year ago at this point, and had to call in some favors to get my Twitter account back and stuff like that. It was insane, and it was all because of Elijah Higgins' Twitter account. It's crazy. You know that I think it was what was that 2019 class? What was that? 2018 maybe. 19 with Jalen Ellis, Elijah Higgins, Garrett Wilson, all in the city of Austin. None of them ended up at Texas. Thank you, Drew Barringer.
Yeah, well, that's changing now, right? And it's funny that you mentioned Garrett Wilson because he's now playing for the Jets and playing pretty damn well. Elijah Higgins in the NFL now, as we just talked about. Sark talked about that today. That they're developing guys, and that whole the one thing that is for sure, and we're going to talk about Colin Simmons here coming up with back-to-back defensive players of the year in the state. Mike, I mean, you've been around recruiting your whole life. It's hard to negative recruit Texas right now. I mean, what are you saying? If you're at Oklahoma or LSU or A&M, what are you saying negative about Texas? What are they not doing?
That you can't get playing time.
Yeah, that's the one, right? Yeah. He won't play. Or the only other thing I think about is Sark's going to take an NFL job at some point. But either way, there's no even whisper of that. So it's like, because they're, the negative recruiting that came the last 10 years was true. It was factual. You're going to be a 5-star that turns into a 3-star. You're not going to play for championships. The coaching's not good. That's why Garrett Wilson left. He said it out loud. I mean, he said the quiet out loud that, I've been here for 10 years now in Austin, and I've seen enough good players come and not get better. I'm going to Ohio State. See y'all. And, of course, it worked out for him. But Sark and this staff have changed that, and I think that is, negative recruiting is a real deal, but it's hard to negative recruit Texas right now. And I think you just said it. You're not going to play much. Maybe we have to wait a while, but you're going to play for championships. You're going to play with good players, play in a great culture, and maybe play for a national championship. All right, let's play this. I want to do this on our halftime. This is kind of cool. You just heard Greg Powers talking about Colin Simmons. Mike, you did the Fab 55 at the Austin Statesman for quite a while. What are your overall scouting reports of Colin Simmons. How good is he? What's his ceiling in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, he's the highest rated, edge rusher in the state since Jackson Jeffcoat. An absolute terror off the edge. That's what Greg Powers described him as the interview. And he comes up big in the biggest games, right? Like, he's a spotlight player. Like, you can tell he enjoys the big games. He enjoys the big players. He's an emotional dude that's going to have to learn to kind of like reel that in a little bit. Coach Samples talked about that, after the game. He got a couple personal fouls and got sucked into some stuff in that first half there against North Shore. But a big time player who likes the stage, who likes big time plays. And I think that'll fit in really well at Texas. He's not somebody who's going to shrink in the moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you're compared to Von Miller, Myles Garrett, Justin Matabike, some of these guys, that's high praise. And he might be, his stats would say he's more productive than all those guys. And I love this about Colin. 2 state titles in football. They also won a state title on the basketball team. Yeah. That's rarefied air for a 6A player in the state to win multiple rings. I wanted to play this for you and show you this because Longhorn fans, this is what Eyes on Texas Multicast is all about. The deep dive into stuff. You want to know this kid behind the scenes. Our friends at Valley Sports did a great piece during championship weekend about Colin, the player that he is, the talent that's coming to Austin, but also a little softer side of the best player in the state in 20 and 24.
Colin Simmons, a standout defensive end.
Colin Simmons taking over this game.
Play my theme song and go!
He was a force to be reckoned with right out of the gates.
He is one of the better pure pass rushers I've seen. He should be an All-American in college. Most definitely should be an NFL player.
I describe him as a terror.
David Amador, trouble, down it goes.
Guess who?
Simmons.
Quarterbacks probably have nightmares. There are a lot of guys who can get to the quarterback, but when he gets to the quarterback, he arrives with bad intentions.
Come after their heads. Come after their heads. That's why we won this game. Because we played to that clock is 0-0-0-0.
Colin Simmons, a huge play.
Exceptional athlete, just really explosive, and he could just get around just about any blocker.
Before he became one of the most sought-after recruits in recent memory, Colin Simmons was just a kid with an abundance of energy in need of an outlet.
The reason why we put him in sports at such a young age is because he was so active. He would run to the restroom. He would run to the refrigerator. He would run when I call him. So his energy level was really high. So I was like, oh, we have to do something different.
When I first started football, I started crying.
Every day, for about 2 weeks straight.
I did not like football. I was so much into basketball. I could have sworn I was going to the NBA.
Those early tears quickly turned to scholarship offers and an explosion of attention from fans, analysts, and even an NFL star.
Me and Colin connected through a close friend of mine. He was telling me about Colin and how he was a huge fan. He asked me if I wanted to go to a Friday night game, and I just showed up. His drive and work ethic, constantly working to be better and pushing himself. It's different to see that into, especially this generation of kids, I'm a person that's willing to do anything to keep getting better.
Well, where he's rated in the state as one of the top 2 players, that puts him in an elite category with guys like Justin Matabike, Myles Garrett, Joseph Osai, Calebon Chason. As far as like first step, playing pad level, playing with his hands, closing speed, like everything you look for in a pass rusher, he is that.
I don't know if I've coached a player that has changed the game like he has, because passing now is such an important facet of the game. And of course, in order to pass, you've got to stop the pass rusher. And that is his specialty.
He started to get a lot of looks. Like Texas was instantly on him.
But the attention from colleges began to overwhelm Colin, whose family life was forever changed when his younger half-brother Clayton was diagnosed with autism shortly before his 5th birthday.
What really made me realize how big of a deal was the series on Netflix, Atypical. The main character is an autistic kid and his family, and they was going through a whole lot of things. In the series, he had an older sister, and how his older sister would take care of him. You can't just always treat them like they're autistic. You have to treat them like they're, one of us. Like, we're all human at the end of the day, And it showed me a lot. It taught me a lot. It opened my mind for sure.
Say cheese.
Whenever you see Clay, you just laugh, because he be doing some crazy stuff sometimes. And it's just him, it's his personality, it's funny, that's what he do.
I just love the fact that he'll just bust into his room and just get in the bed with him, and they wrestle, and
Even when I don't want him to get in the bed with me. Oh,
he just does
God.
it.
God.
He just
adores you.
Yes, he does. He loves Colin.
Him coming up to me, asking me a simple question would just put a smile on my face. Or him coming up to me and giving me a random hug would put a smile on my face. It'd be little things.
Hey, Clayton, why do you love Colin?
You know what love is? Huh? What's love? It's your heart.
Colin cares for his brother so much that he wanted Clayton to become the priority in his recruitment.
I got my story out there one time about my brother. That's when my recruitment started to make a change. College coaches started catching on to what matters to me the most, and it was family. College institutions started writing letters out to my brother instead of me.
When we brought Clayton on some of these trips, how the staff treated him, I think, was very impressionable upon Colin.
As Colin prepares for the future, his devotion to family inspires him to use his platform for a purpose beyond himself.
I feel like everything is for a reason. Everything I have is for a reason. Everything that done happened in my family is for a reason. So I could be in the spot that I am right now, and so I could be in a position to help others. God put me in this world to help others.
There aren't many things for autistic kids to even do on this side of town. We would have to drive
recreational,
nothing.
No, none of that.
We would have to drive so far up north or outside of the city. The thought process was him starting a foundation for special needs kids.
This is nothing but the beginning. Like, I'm only in high school, and once I start to rise to the top, it won't just be just my brother. It will be multiple autistic kids around the whole world.
I'm super, super proud of Colin. I love him, and I'm glad that he does have this platform because it is shedding light on his little brother, and the fact that he's including him, it just speaks volumes.
Me playing football, I have a reason why I want to make it, why I want to play, who I want to do it for, who I want to make happy in the future for the rest of his life, so he don't have to worry about nothing.
All right, great stuff right there. Obviously, autism and dealing with child and kids and brothers with disabilities. We're gonna, when he gets to Austin, we're gonna go to work with him and bring him in, get some NIL conversations going, and make sure he is engaged in the market here in Austin, Texas. No doubt about that. Great piece. That is really, really good stuff in our halftime. It's brought to you by our friends at One Source Gas, my buddy Richard Strever and his growing company at One Source Gas. If you have a company and need compressed gas on a daily or weekly basis, like CO2, nitrogen, oxygen, propane, many more for various industries, One Source Gas is your leader for CO2 and compressed gas needs. Service and hospitality industry for sure, medical industry, veterinary as well. If you need your gas on a daily or weekly basis, you want to work with One Source. There's a reason Richard and his team are growing like they have and taking market share. They've been in operation for over 12 years. But the exceptional customer service is the key. They understand you got to have what you got to have. And if it's not there, it's a pain and a problem. They're there on time. That's why they keep taking market share from others, because they do it better and they do it at a better level. So if you're a bar or restaurant owner, for your beer taps and bar taps, dental office or veterinary clinic, and you have a business with compressed gas needs and looking for a new or better CO2 compressed gas provider, you can't do better than OneSourceGasATX.com. That's one. Make sure you spell out the number one, OneSourceGasATX.com, or call Richard and his team, 512-214-8484. One of their staff members will be glad to help you with your compressed gas needs and get you going in a better direction. That takes us to our third quarter, presented by Brain Vault and the Brain Vault technology. Much more than a mouthpiece, it's an orthotic that is proven, research-based, and on the field to a proven way for young athletes to play hard but play safer by minimizing the risk of concussions. All right, Mike, let's talk about the transfer portal in our third quarter. In addition to the 21 high school prospects who have committed today, 2 portal prospects have been added to this recruiting class, Andrew Makuba and Matthew Golden. And we're going to hear Steve Sarkisian talking about them coming up. But you covered both of those guys, Mike, when you were with the Statesman and covering the Fab 55. Let's start with Matthew Golden out of Klein Cain High School out there in North Houston. Big time speed. Texas scored 2 touchdowns against Texas this year in October against the Longhorns. Great, potentially top end receiver. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Xavier Worthy meets Keelan Robinson when it comes to the total package, because he's also a tremendous kick returner and special teams player.
Yeah, he can immediately walk in and be an all-conference kick returner. He was that at Houston last year, returned one for a score against Texas, had another one returned for a score as a kickoff returner, can return punts as well. Can play outside or inside, did that at Houston. His body suggests slot, but he's fast enough to play vertically to be on the outside. I think Xavier Worthy is a pretty solid combi. He didn't have that kind of up-end talent, but he plays that style of football. A 4-star guy out of Klein Oak, who's a really, really good football player, who I think does well when he's the second or third option. He struggled a little bit as like the number one go-to guy early in the year for Houston, but being one of the guys at Texas that's going to get to spread the ball around, better quarterback play, better offensive line play, I think he's going to thrive in Austin.
Hey, you've covered these guys through high school and now into the year. Look, it feels like the receiver position, Mike, is like the running back position a year ago. In December last year, we're talking about Bijan and Roshan leaving. Who's going to carry the ball? How's that's going to happen? And obviously, the running game was fine. We're talking about the same thing right now because X-Man, A.D. Mitchell, Jatavion Sanders, likely off to the NFL, even Jordan Whittington. You just said it. Matthew Golden probably better in a complementary role, kind of filling a little bit of X stuff, a little bit of Keelan Robinson kind of things. He can do those things, plus return kicks. Who would be the number one receiver in your mind right now? Or is there one? Because Longhorn fans are asking about Evan Stewart from A&M in the portal. Is it Jonte Cook? Is it DeAndre Moore? Is it someone, Ryan Wingo? Is it someone not yet here? That's a big question for Texas into next year.
Yeah, I think if you're Sark and you gave him truth serum, he would like to bring in that guy. I'm not sure that guy is on the roster. I think potentially that guy's on the roster, but it'd be hard to bet on one of them because we hadn't seen it on a consistent level. If you can go get an Evan Stewart, well, then you pencil that right in. Jonte Cook becomes your number 2. Matthew Golden becomes your number 3, and then you work in kind of those other guys like a Ryan Wingo and see if he steps on campus ready to go. Wide receiver is one of those positions where you can hit the ground running. We saw Xavier Worthy do that early on as a freshman. Sark's smart guy. He knows what to give a guy, put it on his plate and what not to put on his plate. And so as we talked about with the running back group over the offseason, I constantly said it's not a position I'm that worried about. Like Texas is going to reach its goals with the running back room that what it is. I think that's true for wide receiver. If Texas underachieves next year, it's not going to be because of the wide receiver room. Like they're going to have enough talent in that room to make it go. If the quarterback play continues to be well, if the offensive line continues to do well, if the defense continues to do well.
Yeah, you look at it the other way. It's the offensive line will be a year better, and we're bringing back 4 starters. And whether it's Brandon Baker or DJ Campbell, Cam Williams or whoever wins the right tackle job, you're going to be better on the offensive line. Jonathan Brooks will come back. Jaden Blue, you've got backs. You also bring 2 backs in this class from the high school ranks. Jarrett Gibson and Christian Clark, both high-end players. You'll run the ball. And Quinn Ewers is a 3-year starter now. If he comes back, they'll move the football. Let me ask you this. This is a debate we've had on our morning show. If one of the 3 eligible players, Jordan Whittington can't return, but if one of the 3, JT Sanders, A.D. Mitchell, or X-Man were to return, which one would be most likely? If there's one. I think they're all gone, but there's some that think there could be one returning.
Yeah, I would imagine. I guess it would be JT Sanders, right? Just because he hadn't played that position all that much. He didn't stay healthy this year. He has some stuff to work on as a blocker. I'd go work on it, getting paid in the NFL. Like I know NIL exists now, but what you want to do is never going to be more profitable than it is to start the clock in the NFL because the payday is that second contract, and the sooner you can get into your first one, the sooner that you can get into your second one. I'd wager that all 3 are gone, but I could see Sanders being talked into coming back depending on what his grade is and where he ranks next to the other tight ends in the draft.
I agree with that. Everything you just said, 100%, because I think I'll say this. I would wager this. Of all the players for this Longhorn team going into the draft this year, the player with the highest ceiling, I believe, is JT Sanders. I think he is a guy, if he gets to the right place 2-3 years from now, as he continues to learn tight end, I think he could be the highest end player. He could be like Bijan Robinson, big picture. If Bijan's not on the right team right now, as we talked about, but I think JT Sanders. I think it'd be some real good players on this class too. I'm not saying that, but JT Sanders. We see the George Kittles and Travis Kelce's and Sam Laporta's. That position is becoming the it position in the NFL. That guy can be. He just picked the position a couple years ago. He's still learning to play tight end, and he's going to learn it at the highest level. 3-4 years from now, we're talking about JT Sanders, one of the best tight ends in pro football. I'd start that clock now. All right, so let's hear Sark on Matthew Golden. Obviously the Longhorns were eager to jump on him immediately when he jumped into the portal, scored 2 touchdowns. Here's Sark on their transfer portal addition out of the University of Houston.
2 things we were looking for in the portal at the receiver position was, one, obviously an experienced playmaker on the outside who was physical enough to play out there. He has good length. He's really well put together. He made a lot of big plays over 2 years at Houston. Clearly in our game, catches 2 touchdowns that were big catches at critical moments of that game. But on the flip side of that, we wanted to see if we could find some value in special teams. And what he was able to do at Houston in the kickoff return game, very impactful there as well. He's more than adequate in the punt return game. So we're finding more than just a one-tool player, a guy who's physical, blocking on the perimeter, can play with the ball in his hands, has the ability to take the top off the defense, but also add value in the return game. So it was kind of a perfect fit for us when it came to what it could project to for our program moving forward.
All right, Mike, good stuff right there. A lot of the same things we said, but man, he walks in returning kicks. Jeff Banks is doing cartwheels. He's happy to have an immediate replacement for Keelan Robinson returning kickoffs and possibly punts. Big picture, guy's electric with the ball in his hands. What about Andrew Makuba? I know when you were covering high school football, Austin LBJ's Andrew Makuba, he and Jamal Fenner really combined to take LBJ to heights they've never been before. Jamal Fenner is now the director of high school relations at Texas. This seemed like a natural when it happened. And man, with Jahdae Barron leaving, Jahdae Barron and Andrew Makuba are friends. He's from Manor, or he's from LBJ. Jahdae's from Pflugerville. They work out together. This feels like kind of the replacement for Jahdae at that all-important star position for Texas.
Yeah, rangy guy, can cover, not afraid to come hit you, ultra productive, and if you play defense at Clemson with Dabo and what they're doing out there, you're going to be fundamentally sound. And so a guy that's going to come in and be an instant upgrade, maybe not even an upgrade at nickel, but an upgrade of what you would have had you stayed pat with Barron leaving. He's going to, like you said, slide in, probably be the starter at that position. Somebody who's played some major college football. And that's going to be big. When you're going to lose as many guys as they are, it's going to be nice to replace at least 1 or 2 of those positions with somebody with that type of production and experience.
All right, let's hear Sark on Andrew Makuba coming in back home, coming back to the 5-1-2. Great stuff.
Again, we're getting a player who is, for 3 years, been a frontline starter at Clemson and has been playing football at a high level for a very good program, one that I have a ton of respect for Coach Sweeney and the job they do at Clemson. He's been in big-time games, big-time moments. So as much as, we're losing some veteran players in that secondary, especially at that safety position, to add a guy who has that much experience and has played in big games and in big moments, I think will be a really good calming effect for us. He's a really versatile player. He's played star. He's played safety. He's covered in man. He's plays physical. So for us, just that experience and the fact for him that he gets to come home, right, and to be back home, a place that I joked with him. I said, man, I wish I could have been here when you were coming out. Maybe you would have got to come here right out of high school. But it's great for him, right? And he's got a lot of friends on the team, and so that's a great opportunity.
All right, yeah, he reminds me, Mike. He right now, A.D. Mitchell committed to Texas mid-January of last year after they won the national championship. Right, it's a big deal. Kind of feels like Makuba could be the A.D. Mitchell of the defense versus the offense a year ago, where on the offensive side, you needed someone with experience who could take the pressure off of X-Man and really take this passing game to a different level as they change and rebuild this safety position in the defensive backfield. You need a quarterback back there. You need a guy who can really come in, as Sark said, has been in high level games, been in national, big time moments. He's not afraid of it, kind of thrives in it. He could be for the defense what AD Mitchell was for the offense this year, I believe, with PK and where they're trying to go with the coverage, sticky coverage, pass rush getting home, taking that next step as a chaos defense for the Longhorns. One other name, Mike, I want your thoughts in the portal conversation about Trey Owens. Trey Owens, I should say. Trey Moore. Owens is the quarterback. Trey Moore from UTSA. By all accounts, he's down to Texas and Alabama. He's visited both schools. He knows the score. He's waiting to make a decision. Any thoughts on Trey Moore? I mean, what an addition he would be. A pass rusher from UTSA out of Smithson Valley who had 14 sacks last year, 17 tackles for loss. It's a natural player who was kind of overlooked coming out of high school.
Yeah, a really productive guy, over 25 sacks over the last 2 years at UTSA, over 30 tackles for loss. And so in the backfield, he wasn't even healthy this last year and still, led the AAC in sacks and was their defensive player of the year. He slipped through the crack. I think he was a COVID casualty, one of those guys that blossom late. Smithson Valley is not a place you just happen upon. You got to purposefully go to Smithson Valley to recruit. I don't think he had the buzz early on in his recruitment to kind of get the big time coaches out there. So fell to UTSA in a cycle where, it was harder to get on the road and do those evals when he was a sophomore and junior, but has really turned the corner, was coached up well as the Roadrunners. They've done well with edge rushers the last couple of years. A really big time player and somebody who, we talked about earlier how Colin Simmons doesn't have to come in and be your leading sacker right away. That is super true if Trey Moore is there, right? Like now you get to use Colin Simmons in a more judiciary way, just be a third down specialist or whatever you feel like he can do right away. He would take a lot of pressure off that. And you're going to need multiple guys, right? They're moving into the SEC. You start looking at that schedule next year and you don't have many breaks. You're going to need 60, 70 scholarship guys to get through that deal. He adds some depth and some much needing playmaking ability to the edge out there because they're not going to be as good in the interior, right? You're not going to lose to Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, and be as good in the interior. They're going to have to make up for that elsewhere at the linebacker spot or at the edge spot or in the secondary, as we talked about. So the more guys you can bring in there to be disruptive, the better.
Agreed. And obviously Ethan Burke made a step this year, Baron Sorrells, and Colton Vossick's a guy out of Westlake who redshirted this year that also can be a factor. But yeah, you want to be able to rotate those guys in a big way, and they should be able to do that. And Trey Moore would be a big part of that. So we'll watch the portal real quick before we wrap up our third quarter. Evan Stewart, it is a buzz among Longhorn fans. There's a thought that maybe Sark wasn't real happy with the way the flip happened back in 2021 when he was committed to Texas, then ended up flipping to A&M. They've talked about character and, any thoughts on that? I mean, he's really a talented player. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's tough. I don't know all the ins and outs, right? So, obviously, Steve Sarkisian's going to have a little bit more insight into this, and if he feels kind of ill done by it, then that's his choice, and he's earned the scraps on the wall to start doing that kind of stuff, right? To be picky and in the fan base, maybe trust his decision making there. I would imagine you smooth that over, you chalk it up to a teenager being a teenager in a big time pressure situation where most of us weren't 17 years old and had social media and had all the pressure that a guy like Evan Stewart was going through during his recruiting process. And so I'd imagine it's water under the bridge. If Evan Stewart wants to come play football at Texas, I'd imagine they shake some hands and figure that thing out. But he's going to have plenty of options, and Texas is going to be fine whether they get a guy like that in there or not. And that just goes back to that roster building stuff we talked about.
Yeah, I think I was told today that I think Sark, he would forgive it, but he'd like Evan Stewart to come to them a little bit, almost come like we're not going to chase it again. We're not doing that. If you want to come play, Jonte Cook's one of your good friends. You and Quinn Ewers are good friends. We'd love to have you, but we're not going full court press again, which interesting. I'll put it back in his court a little bit. Love to have you, but not chasing. All right, that's our third quarter. It's brought to you by our friends at Brain Vault and the Brain Vault technology. This is unbelievable technology, folks. We talk about it every week with the Brain Vault, but if you got a young athlete, which a lot of you do, who play contact sports, whether it be football, soccer, lacrosse, rugby, cheerleading for the young ladies, volleyball, this is a patented mouth guard, Brain Vault, that's revolutionary. It's been proven to help reduce the risk of concussions, which is what we're all trying to do. Play harder, but play safer. And that's what Brain Vault is all about. Designed by my friend, Dr. Greg Eckert and his team. He's my dentist, but he also dealt with Drew Pittman, an NFL agent, come up with the Brain Vault technology to wear during play and practice and games. It aligns the lower jaw in a position that strengthens the neck muscles and minimizes concussive forces. And Drew Pittman, who's an agent in the NFL, more than 100 of his clients have been wearing the Brain Vault technology the last 8 years. No concussions reported, not a single one. And it's now gone to retail. You can get your young athlete fitted for the Brain Vault technology. You can get your whole team fitted for Brain Vault technology. That's become a popular thing where entire teams come in to schedule a group fitting. You can do that at brainvault.com. That's brainvault.com. Again, research-based, proven on the field and behind the scenes there with the research that it works to help minimize reduce the risk of concussions. And all you have to do is go to brainvault.com. That's brainvault.com to learn more. All of the information, all the questions you have in your head right now are there and answered, and go from there. Brainvault.com. Play harder and play safer with Brain Vault. All right, our fourth quarter presented by my new pearly white smile. You see it right there. Dr. Greg Eckert, he restored my teeth now in my 50s now. Dr. Eckert, Dr. Ueckert, and it's completely game-changing ability to restore your smile, whether it's a couple of teeth, one tooth, or the entire mouth. He can do that for you at dreckert.com. All right, Mike, final four pressing questions we have not talked about. Congratulations to your UTSA Roadrunners who won their first ever bowl game this week. They beat and rallied to beat Marshall after a 14-0 deficit, 35-17. Props to the Roadrunners. Mimi?
Yeah, it could be a new era starting there. Luke McCown with his first start. Frank Harris out with a shoulder injury, so that'll end a very storied career there. Probably should get his number retired, which would get weird because UTSA tries to do this kind of 2-1-0 triangle of toughness, and he would be the 0. So I don't know how you retire that, but something needs to happen there because he's kind of the first great player in UTSA history. And Jeff Traylor gets the only thing he hasn't done in college football off his back there and won a bowl game. So UTSA's had some weird luck in bowls and stuff going on, and they almost happened again with Harris being out, but they were able to overcome against a Marshall team that, quite frankly, wasn't
really.
Did
I dream this, or did you tell me? Because I dream about things like podcasts and things. Did I dream this, that he can come back next year? Is that true, or is he's done?
No, he's done. He's done. He could have applied for a waiver and probably gotten it the way the NCAA gives that stuff out now, like their UNICEF. But he is done. He has had 7 surgeries on his left knee, 3 surgeries on his other knee, and 2 on his shoulder. I think he's ready just to go be a working stiff like the rest of us.
Good he's a legend. He'll never buy a drink or a meal in San Antonio ever again, right? Pretty cool. How about Texas Tech? They beat Cal in the Independence Bowl on Saturday night. So another Texas team you cover with a win. Joey McGuire's team playing some great defense in the second half. It's hard to pick these bowl games, but hey, that's back-to-back resounding bowl wins for Joey McGuire to end seasons. Joey's got to figure out the start of the year, right?
Yeah, he, I think Traylor's kind of the same way, right? Like if you look at both of those guys, their record in November, December have been really, really good. It's been the first part of the year. And I think some of that goes back to how they were trained as coaches, and that's for the playoffs. Like they were high school football coaches where the non-district wasn't as important. You try to play your best football towards the end of the year and then get in the playoff and go win. It's obviously a little bit different in college football, but to go 6-6 in the regular season and to hold on to the recruiting class that they were able to hold on to, I think speaks to what the recruits and kind of the state of Texas feels about Joey McGuire and the trajectory of that program. Now, Micah Hudson's the highest ranked recruit that Texas Tech has ever signed, first 5-star to sign there. That rarely happens at a non-SEC, non-Big Ten school that just went 6-6 in year 2 under a coach. And so I think the roster is going to get better and better without Texas, without Oklahoma there. I've been fascinated over who was going to rise to the top as the recruiting school of that conference, and maybe it's going to be Texas Tech and the money that they have out in West Texas.
Yeah, interesting. Let me ask about OU in our Final Four here, Mike. The top 10 class, there's been Colin Cowherd, the national pundit and conversationalist, talked about that OU moving to the SEC was like Nebraska moving to the Big Ten and moving out of the Big 12. But they land a top 10 class. I mean, it's Longhorns are sitting at 4 or 5. Oklahoma sitting at 7 or 8 or 9. Give some props to Brett Venables. They still have Dallas, and they can still recruit in pockets nationally. Oklahoma props. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where Cowherd is going with that because, it doesn't work as well in the SEC for Oklahoma as maybe it does for Texas, maybe it does for Texas A&M. But where I would push back is the proximity. And Nebraska got locked out because they're landlocked. Whereas Oklahoma, they're as close to Dallas as Texas is. They're as close to Dallas as A&M is, right? And so as long as they have the Metroplex, they're going to do well. And as long as they have the trophy case that they have and the coaching staff that they do and the Jordan brand and everything else that goes into that now with the SEC, they're going to continue to recruit at a high level. The question is, you were first or second in the Big 12 every single year in recruiting, right? Now you're going to be in that 5, 6, 7 range. I don't think Oklahoma is going to get into like third or fourth ranked recruiting classes. It's going to be 8 to 12 unless they're winning championships. Can you still have the type of success at Oklahoma with the 5th or 6th best recruiting class every year in the SEC as opposed to having the 1st or 2nd best in the Big 12?
Yeah, that's a big conversation because how about this, Nolan? And Mike, the recruiting class, Texas is 3 or 4 or 5, depending on what service you're looking at, the composite. Oklahoma's 8 or 9. The next closest is Texas Tech at 24. Okay. That's what the Big 12 has been. And that's kind of right? 24, 30, 35, 42 on down. In the SEC now, Texas is 4, but they're behind Georgia and Alabama. They're just ahead of, the Ole Miss, and Auburn had a top 10 class. I mean, this is the neighborhood you're now playing in. Your class is good, but everyone's class is good. It raises the level. I think that's what's so exciting about where this is going for the Longhorns. And A&M down at 21. LSU, this is a big story too. LSU was like 15. They didn't sign a top 50 player. Texas is getting into Louisiana and taking better players out of there than Brian Kelly's getting. That is the storyline moving forward, Mike, as we cover SEC recruiting now after this year.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma would have more of a fear of turning into Tennessee than in Nebraska, for example, right? Where Tennessee is still a good program that's recruiting well, but just compared to their peers, they got the 6th or 7th most talented roster, and that's hard to win with week in, week out. Maybe an Ole Miss is another good example, and so that's the worry if you're OU. It's kind of the worry if you're Texas, but with this kind of success and this runway into the SEC, they've been able to capitalize that and get back in to that national conversation. And so, that's to me, that's the most interesting part of this realignment stuff. Like I think it's a net negative in the whole for college football. But one of the interesting things it will display is how recruiting is relative. And will USC really like life better in the Big Ten? Will Texas really like life better in the SEC? OU, where will this land? It'll be fun to figure that out over the next couple of years.
Well, in a future episode, we will play Chip Kelly's thoughts from UCLA over the weekend after their bowl game about fixing college sports. I thought it was pretty on point and provocative. And it's something we'll get into when it's not National Signing Day week in the month of January for sure, because it's something we've talked about quite a lot. I've talked about quite a lot where college football is going and needs to go. And not just college football, but college athletics in a bigger way. Mike, any other top Final Four stories percolating on top of your head? I know you also do an A&M podcast for Dave Campbell's Texas football. What's going on there? They've lost some guys. Texas is still in on some guys that may not commit until February. What's going on down at College Station? What's the mood there?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you make a coaching change, there's optimism. But one of the reasons that Elko was hired was to keep a lot of these guys in. It was thought he was kind of an extension of the old staff, that he'd be able to come in, keep a lot of the defensive players, maybe keep an Evan Stewart. Hasn't really been true, right? Walter Nolan, Evan Stewart, a lot of those guys have jumped into the portal. I'm of the belief that you do what Sark and Texas did, and that's kind of burn it down to the base level of it, and then start back over and build it up from scratch. But I don't know if that patience is going to be afforded to them. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the portal versus recruiting rankings. It's a tough time to take a job. It'll be interesting to see what they do in 2024. I think Terry Bussey's kind of the one, right? Like they're going to lose a couple of guys. If they can hold on to Terry Bussey, I think they're going to feel pretty good about what they were going to do. But the portal's going to make or break Elko's ability to win right away in 2024.
Two things I've heard: LSU's coming hard for Terry Bussey, the youngster out of Timpson, yep, who just won a state title. LSU's going to come full bore on that one for sure. I would also say that Texas will play Washington in inside 2 weeks. And both of those programs changed coaches not long ago, and they're both playing for a national title. You get the right guy, stick with it. It can change. It really can. Steve Sarkisian and Kalen DeBoer have done both tremendous jobs. We'll see if Mike Elko is the right guy. That is going to be a wrap on another edition of the Eyes on Texas Multigas presented by Grande Equipment. Mike, next week we will go full bore Sugar Bowl. It'll be a full 4-quarter Sugar Bowl preview, all angles, all conversations, because we'll be counting down the days to New Year's night in New Orleans. Excited about that. What is your plan between now and then for your holiday?
Oh, I have no idea. I hadn't even thought that far. I forgot that there was a holiday until I saw your tree. I leave for the Sugar Bowl the 27th. So I'm just loading up for that. Got to write a Texas State story. They're playing in their first ever bowl game on the 26th. So I'll cover that before I head out on the 27th. So I'm sure I'll see my family between now and then, and we'll figure out a way to open some gifts or whatever. We don't have many young kids in my family, so there's not a whole lot of Christmas stuff going on.
Well, you and I will raise a Diet Pepsi or a soda water in New Orleans. You and I, because you don't imbibe any longer. But I'd love to see you out there.
I'll take a Dr. Pepper. I'll take as many Dr. Peppers as you can give me.
Yeah, you are such a Texan all the way through. That's why you're the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. We are a product of the Republic of Football and Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network. We're powered by Grande Equipment. Thank you to our digital producer, Nolan Hogan. Nolan, Merry Christmas to you, my friend, and we'll see you here at the house in a couple of days, okay?
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Also, our executive producer, Griffin Hogan, who puts all this together, edits it down. Incredible work again this week. Thanks to our founding partners at thetexasmortgageguy.com, our buddy Carlos Carrion, Hayes City Store in Driftwood, Texas, also Taste on Main in downtown Buda, One Source Gas of Central Texas, Dr. Greg Eckert, my dentist, thank you, pretty smile, and his Brain Vault technology. And of course, we're powered by our presenting sponsor at Grande Equipment. Our buddy Wes Murray, will see him in New Orleans as well. Big Easy Bound is what we are. We'll have a full Sugar Bowl preview next week. That is our signing day review. Hope you enjoyed it. Send it to a friend. Make sure you pass it along and follow us on all of our social media platforms. It is the Eyes on Texas multicast, available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's and the Horn Austin YouTube pages, available for download on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. You guys have a great one.